LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Lydia. My name is Lydia Khalil. Today we are going to be talking about mental health as we usually do, but from the aspect of being an advocate. What does advocacy mean? Why does somebody choose to become an advocate? How does it work? What does it entail? Like what do I need to do? Please help me welcome Chiamaka Asiegbunam.
Hello. Hi.
Good evening. Thank you for agreeing to come.
So much.
Share. You're welcome. Reading through your bio, your first degree is international relations and diplomacy. And then you worked as a business development officer at Amazon Energy Limited. So, talk a bit about yourself before I ask you how you got on the journey of, being a mental health advocate.
Oh, so I was laughing. I usually get that question a lot. International relations, business development, mental health advocacy. So, my name is Chiamaka Asiegbunam. I am, like you said, a graduate of international relations and diplomacy from Afe Babalola University. And I think I would describe myself as a little bit of everything. I've touched basically every aspect of the corporate world, but mental health is something that is very, very important to me. Especially when it comes to not just mental health, welfareism and humanitarianism. I always say that when people express themselves with dance, music, arts, every other medium of art, mine is mental health advocacy. When I think of myself, I think of mental health, welfareism, humanitarianism generally. I think that's a bit of what I can say about myself.
Okay. So normally somebody who advocates usually would have an experience, they may have seen somebody suffer or they themselves might be suffering, and then it sort of puts a light bulb and they're thinking, since I'm challenged or somebody I know is suffering, and it's been a struggle to get help. It's been a struggle to be understood. I might have had disappointments from organizations, how I was managed or the person was treated or managed. So how did your own journey start? Why did you?
Well, I feel like my journey with mental health advocacy, I always say, was divinely orchestrated, because it had a lot to do with my faith. I think it was at a point of spiritual awakening for me, but also because I would not leave out the part where I actually did have a time in my life where I sort of dangled with my mental health in my teenage days. I didn't have any diagnosis, so I don't like to say that I was depressed per se, because that's huge. But I did have a point where I was struggling mentally as a teenager. And I think I approached mental health from the area of emotional, like my emotional experiences and what I had experienced emotionally firsthand. I really didn't know that mental health was deeper than I thought of it, that I had seen and experienced. So it was mostly for me about like what I had experienced with my mental health, and also seeing that, in the community we live in, the stigma around emotional health, generally, mental health is something that deeply hurts me. The way that people do not say anything about it, the way that people know it, really made me think, like, what can I do to actually feel a need in this area with regards to, humanitarianism, welfareism generally. So I think that for me is that was the point. Yeah.
Okay, I think you said something quite key, that a lot of times faith groups link mental health. If somebody says they're suffering in any way, they link it to the spirit. They feel it's something coming from that realm. And I think one of my biggest challenges was to say no, actually. Sometimes even growing up as a teenager, it could be something hormonal. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there could have been something hormonal. Sometimes trauma starts like that, you know. But the idea that it's, either a Christian is possessed or oppressed, sometimes I tend to beg to differ. And I say it all the time, that it's not necessarily because I don't feel that doesn't exist, but I feel a lot of times that is in the reason, that is in the reason why that person is suffering, the distress that they're suffering. And quite rightly, as you said, a lot of times we haven't considered the importance of mental well-being. A lot of times we talk about the physical well-being. People talk about eating well, exercising, keeping your weight down, but nobody actually ever thinks about looking after their mental health. And I say this all the time, that actually, if you're well in your head, most of the time you'll be well in your body,
Yeah.
because the health of the mind impacts the physical body. Okay, so your journey started, as I said, usually for most people who advocate, is either from their own personal journey, or um, somebody they're close to. So how was this idea of advocacy, or setting a stage for people who were struggling with mental health? How was it received?
To be honest, like I get that thing where I walk into a place and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" I work for. I run a mental health awareness foundation. They're like, they they first off look at me as the person with a mental health challenge. I'm like, you know how mental health is perceived around this part of the world, as when you say mental health, the first thing people say is they look at you and they're like, I'm okay. I'm not losing some nuts. I'm like, calm down. So I try to, it's like they gave me that long stare and they're like, what actually, that question they asked me, oh, what actually inspired you? How did you start this? Did you struggle with mental health? I think they have this image where they paint of me in their head. So usually they look at me like, okay, there's a story behind this. So I get that a lot. But then there are also some people who are very, very, very accommodating, and they're very supportive. They look at
Mhm,
me and they're like, "Oh, you're doing something really good." A lot of them do not understand it, but they are
mhm,
very welcoming to the idea of understanding what mental health is. But in the part of the world where I am, I really do not, it's not new for me to be looked at as
mhm,
you went to school and you studied international relations, and really this is what you want to do. So yes, I'm completely used to it. It's not unknown to me. Generally the reception here has been, I think it's that even fuels my passion to actually do more enlightenment and awareness around mental health advocacy. Yeah.
mhm. And I think what you're talking about is the stigmatization and the idea that people feel, either if you're working in that field, um, everybody who is experiencing mental health is on the top end of having what we would call like a psychosis, and having no grasp on reality. So I guess hence people from my work, people ask me all the time, you mean people come and sit down in front of you and talk for 50 minutes? Well, I had a client this morning and a friend called just before 8 a.m. and I said, look, I need to go. You need to tell me what it is you need. Because I've got a client at 8. And he said, oh my God, she must really have big problems to be having an 8 a.m. I was like, no, it's just a normal session. She has work at 9. So 8 a.m. is, her time. So it shows that actually, and some of these remarks are coming from people who are well educated.
Yes.
So I want us to let people understand that actually it's not people who aren't literate. They are people who are very literate, but because of the stigma and the fear and all the things that go along when they hear the word mental health, the sort of imagination runs wild and people are and this idea that actually it can't be me, it can't. Do you feel that people sometimes feel, you know what, it can't be me? Other people may be suffering, but I'm okay, I'm doing well.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think it's something that everybody. I think the fact that people do not see mental health as their psychological well-being is what is true. Because a lot of people, like you said, when they think of mental health, they can imagine an extreme case of psychosis or someone who is self-harming or someone who is suicidal. And the first thing they're like, not me. Especially in a highly religious country, and it's like, God forbid, it can't be me.
It's not my portion. That's the secret. It's not my portion.
So it's always like that. And then I think there's this thing where you actually tell them, you could actually be living with some sort of I'm like, please don't tell me that. You can't tell me that. I am perfect. I am 100%. I remember the first time I actually saw someone have a panic attack, and I actually tried to explain that what happened was a panic attack, and she looked at me and like, what are you saying? Please, I don't understand what you're saying. This must be something from the devil because I don't get.
The devil is always at work.
Oh yeah.
I think unfortunately, like everything that maybe when Christians self-sabotage or don't want to accept something, they hand the complete responsibility to the devil and say, it must be the devil. And I always have this joke I crack that the devil must be saying, I'm the accuser of the brethren, but the brethren accuse me more than
Yeah.
they accuse me more than the tricks that I am up to. It's like they make him omnipotent and omnipresent.
Yeah.
But I think what we are saying, even though we're saying it in a jokey manner, is quite serious. The idea that people should begin to recognize what signs are. People should begin to learn how to manage so that these things are rid of. And as you quite rightly said, a lot of people are living with mental health issues. They're just masked or giving, saying the day I don't feel myself, the devil is at work again. So I guess conversations like this help let people know that it's okay. And sometimes, as you said, people don't know. So somebody's having a panic attack. They feel it's something spiritual, while it's just their body responding to the amount of stress that it can't manage anymore. The body is saying, I can't deal with the anxiety. I can't deal with the stress that is being managed somehow, and I can't manage it anymore. And the body is saying, I've had enough.
I had an episode of an anxiety attack, and I have never experienced an anxiety attack. This is something that I talk about a lot with people. I explain what the situation would look like, but I don't feel like I've actually experienced it consciously. And I was looking at my hands and I was shaking, and I was like, it's happening. This thing you talk about is actually happening. It was like staring at me in the face. And even as educated as I thought I was on the topic, it still felt very strange to me. So
Mm-hmm.
I can completely relate to someone who is not educated on talking. It's a thing from the devil.
So how does I want to look at my question so I can frame it properly. So why is mental health advocacy important? Why is it important?
I feel like the fact that mental health advocacy and mental health generally has placed exclusively, like we mentioned, from the general well-being, the health, it is something that I feel it's not acceptable because like I have this analogy where I say before something happens physically, it must have somehow expressed itself mentally. And the fact that there's a lot of awareness around, nobody asks questions like, why do you do awareness around malaria eradication? But this is something that needs to happen. But when it comes to mental health, it's like, okay, why are you? I feel like it's a thing that is a very important part of life, is something that needs to happen. And I feel it's not just exclusive to just a few people. Everybody could actually be a mental health advocate. So I think it's something that needs to happen. The fact that it's not happening as much in this part of the world and globally, I would even say just in Nigeria. I think a lot of countries are just getting to the point of awakening when mental health is something that I think is very important. So I believe that when we are able to tackle the ignorance and stigma around mental health, then we're making steps in actually addressing some general health issues, with that might have played out health-wise that actually managed from a point where, if you had taken good care of your mental health, this would have happened. So that,
I think so. Do you advocate prevention, or what is your main advocacy? Are you advocating for people who are suffering and don't have a voice, or are you just bringing awareness of the possibility of looking after, or how to look after your mental health?
I think I always call myself mental health first aider, in the sense that it's really not just about what the treatment or what needs to be done or how to. I think it's the whole idea of the mental health generally, the awareness, what happens if you're living with a mental health issue, how do you take care of it, how do you prevent a mental health issue. It's generally everything. I first started off as a safe space where people who actually feel like they might be struggling with mental health could pour out. Okay, this is what I'm going through. I don't have an answer for it. I don't know what it is. So for me, it was more about the awareness. Okay, to talk about what you're feeling. But after a while, I started to see that most people who would actually be living with mental health issues that properly have diagnosis for it reach out to me. Then it started to be like me being a mediator between the counselors and therapists with those people. So I would tell you need to see a therapist. I could link you with this person, what you need me to do. And then it got to the point where I would actually I'll create like steps for people to be able to manage their mental health, to prevent, okay, if you feel like what you need to do to take care, like a self-care routine type of thing. So for me, it's just everything. It's a bit everywhere. There's the awareness aspect of it. There's the advocacy part of it, where we are actually going to the policy realm of mental health. So it's a little bit of everything. I just think everything mental health matters.
Okay, so it was something that it sounds like you thought, okay, let me do something a little to help,
Yes.
and it seems like it's developed into quite a big piece of work that you are doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It actually
Okay.
started off
Mhm.
small, and yeah.
It's evolved. And when I know you did say a few times, the part of the world you are in Nigeria, in Africa.
Yes,
Okay. And why do we need change in the policies? Because even in the UK and across the world now, mental health is big. Um, Big in the sense of it's just being acknowledged and people can feel a bit easier if they say to somebody at work or say to their manager, you know what, I'm not feeling myself. I think I need to see a therapist. And that kind of support they're paying, or the insurance companies are paying for people to see therapists just to manage. So it's quite different, I know, in
Yeah.
developing nations where the awareness is there, but it's still a struggle. Words like people committed suicide are still being used, and people I
Mm.
know can actually be arrested for attempting to take their own life. So talk why policy is important, and how far you've come on that journey.
So with I'm currently studying to become a policy analyst. I'm studying social and public policy, and one of the reasons why I chose that course is because of this aspect of mental health in Nigeria with regards to policy. I believe that policy is like is the basis for anything to actually thrive in this country. And the thing about mental health policies in Nigeria, it's not even that they exist or they are not enforced. The answer is, I would say, to a large extent, there are no policies. Most of the policies that exist for mental health are sort of not exclusive from, the general health standpoint. It's
Mm-hmm.
just included in that health aspect. And then there are like some policies that are, there, but they are just binding for people maybe living with mental health illnesses, and, how they should be treated and justice and things like that, which is actually good. But the problem remains as policies enforced. You go out and you see people who have extreme cases of psychosis or schizophrenia, and there's nobody addressing those issues. There are no right bodies holding them accountable. I like how you mentioned that in the UK that there are laws like the cover people being able to, go and see a therapist. In Nigeria, most of the HMOs that we have, except now that most of them are now evolving and taking up these ideas, most corporate environments, very little. I can't walk up to my manager and say, "Oh, sir, or ma, I'm having a mental health issue, and I'm struggling with my mental health, and I think I need a break from work." I think it's something that they will look, are you serious? It's something that is considered very fickle. And that goes a lot to say how we think of mental health in Nigeria. If the labor union had policies that are sustaining workers and, as they say, cover the welfare and health of general workers in Nigeria, then companies will be held accountable. We would have companies know that there are labor laws that permit staff from being able to take some days off for mental health leave, have things like mental health leave. We have HMOs that cover people being able to see a therapist if they are struggling, or people letting out or reaching out. And we have awareness campaigns within the offices that enlighten people on mental health. And even generally in Nigeria, one of the most expensive things to have is a therapist. Most people don't go to therapy, not because they don't want to go to therapy, because the cost of therapy in very expensive. It's not as affordable as seeing a general doctor if you have a headache or you have a fever. They
Mm-hmm.
consider mental health issue. That's what they call it around here. So it's like there are no policies that protect the average man, which is why people think that mental health is in for the rich, because there are no policies that are linked directly to the average man able to actually take care of his mental health if he has some issues or he's struggling with it. And with regards to like people who are living with mental health issues, these people are not even considered. They are not even considered. They are not as cared for as we say that our policies are supposed to cover. We said the law about somebody who we had the law about people who had attempted to commit suicide going to jail for a particular time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, these are things that a simple rehabilitation program can cover. We have people, young teenagers, young adults who are in jail languishing for something that is simple behavioral health program, like a rehabilitation program would have covered, but there are no policies to help these people. So it's these are things that when I look at, I'm like, do we really have policies in Nigeria that actually cover mental health in Nigeria? I know that Nigeria is signed to a lot of treaties and charters with the United Nations and prides itself as one of the countries that take mental health seriously, but I don't think that there's that sustainable policy that covers mental health. And even if they are, I don't think that they are rightly enforced as much as they should be.
Okay. So from what I'm hearing you saying is that one of your goals is to make sure that policies are made, created, and published, and then enforced in the general populace of Nigeria. I think also I know that living in Nigeria, people suffer quite a lot of trauma. You know, people are attacked regularly by armed robbers, and it almost feels like people are constantly, and most people would have had one encounter, if not more, um, by it. And a lot of people are living like with PTSD because there's this,
Mhm.
once the lights go off, people like, really freak out because it reminds them, or if there's a loud noise or bang or something, then it comes. And people actually, from, like, I'm just using that because I know that's a frequent occurrence where people can be robbed today on their way home and expected to be at work the next day. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
very
Hmm.
much so.
Hmm.
Very,
Hmm. And
very
there
much
is
so. I
no,
think it's
no acknowledgement that actually they might need the day off, or they might need to take some time off, or they might need to actually speak to somebody to work out, what had happened, to help the body and the mind heal again.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
So really, I mean, I know we're talking of something that is quite idealistic, and even in sort of developed countries is still a struggling thing. And people also in some parts of the developed world are still having struggles either to pay for therapy and are relying on charities who give free therapy. And the idea that, only really, like Freud, only the elite can afford therapy. So how far are we away from the implementation of some of these policies? Like, how real is or how close is the government to acknowledging that this is an area that they need to look into?
Personally, I feel like a lot of awareness has been going on, around mental health in Nigeria. I always like to honor people who have been committed to this cause, because I see a lot of awareness going on around mental health in Nigeria. I know that it is now being recognized to some extent. I see some organizations, some health organizations, HMOs now including mental health awareness and mental health laws and policies with part of their services that they offer. But at the federal level, the question remains, what has been done at the federal level? What are they doing at the federal level? I feel like
Mm-hmm.
there's still lapses. There's still not being recognized as much as they should. And I still ask the question, is it because mental health is considered fickle? Is it something that is not considered as important as other person issues? Is that the standpoint? But I like that the awareness and the advocacy is still going on, and I don't believe that that's going to happen within a space of today, tomorrow, next year. I think it's something that we are sowing a seed, and we're raising the question, and we keep asking, and we keep requesting for accountability from our lawmakers and our judiciary and our people who execute these laws to actually consider putting strong policies for mental health awareness in Nigeria.
Okay. So what can the average person who's watching you today, because I believe change, we are the change, if
Mm-hmm.
you believe, because I can hear it in your voice how passionately, the minute I talked about policy, you sort of just took over. um but what can somebody who is watching, how can we, because I believe if we all did our little bit, then it will make life easier, not only for our fellow human being, but it will make actually policies and implementations. And for people like you who've chosen to use it as a life's work, it will make that I don't want to use struggle, but it will make that journey easier for you. So what can the average person what do you think is useful that they can do in terms of, asking these big questions like, what exactly do we have in stock for people? What help do we have? What policies do we have? How can an average person help? How can they begin to have those conversations in their organizations?
I think the first thing to do is to recognize the importance. We should first of all start by erasing that ignorance that mental health is not important and that it is just something that happens to a few, and seeing it from the aspect that it could be anybody. It could be me today, it could be me, it could be someone I care about tomorrow. And that starts with us extending mercy towards each other, including ourselves. And I always say, being a safe space. The truth is, you really don't know how much. Even I didn't recognize how much of a need that mental health was until like when I became a mental health advocate. And there are times where I get up to like 10 people reaching out to me in a day. Sometimes I get calls at night with people asking me, okay, what do I need to do? Someone I know right now is very suicidal, and I am on the phone basically trying to calm someone down. And, seeing all these things, seeing people actually struggle makes me ask the question, what can we do? Policy aspect, what can we do in our own organizations, within our own organizations? These are conversations. I personally did an awareness talk in my office when I was doing my youth service. And at the end of the day, everybody was just quiet. It was a conversation that was hard to have, but it was something that needed to have, especially with regards to trauma. People like having existing trauma and walking around with trauma. Someone walks into the office in the morning and they're angry for no reason. You don't know what they're dealing with. You don't know what they are struggling with. Some people, I've seen people who possibly have a mental health issue who are working in corporate organizations without proper management and somehow reflecting on other people. And these are things that therapy could solve. People who are, if they're aware, they're constantly aware. So I think that identifying that need and being a safe space, being tolerable, extending grace to people helps us see the need, for these things to be done. That way, when we start with being kind to each other, when we start with being a safe space where a brother or sister can talk to, then we understand the need for more to be done. I think it's just about starting small. I don't expect anybody to wake up today and decide to be a policy advocate. I think it's starting small and being a safe space within your home, within your environment. That's
Okay. All right. So people can look out. This is something we say all the time. Be your brother's keeper. If you notice somebody isn't having a good day, just reach out and ask them what it is that they need. They might just need a conversation. They might just need to share, something that is going on with them. So it's about being your brother's keeper, as you said, and then maybe pointing them to people like you who are able to provide some kind of support or signpost them to another organization. All right, thank you. What we're going to talk about Unveil. Why did you start Unveil? I know we've sort of talked around it. Actually, why Unveil? What is Unveil? That maybe that's a way of putting the question.
Unveil actually is, I call it my brainchild, because funny enough, Unveil was a product of a conversation. And it came from me, like I said, like a divine inspiration. It was something that I just woke up one morning and I was like, I'm going to do this. And I feel like there was a nudge in my heart. How it happened, till today, I'm still not able to properly explain how it happened. Honestly, I feel like it's actually unveiled the light at the end of the tunnel. So for me, it was me explaining to people that, no matter what you're going through, there's always light in what you're going through. There's always a light, no matter how far down you are in the tunnel, there's always light there to embrace you. So I was having a discussion with my friends and they were like, oh, how people are not able to have these conversations how we've had. And I'm like, something needs to happen. I feel a nudge in my heart to do something because I sparked that conversation. So Unveil was born and it started in 2018. So by this year, it would be 3 years old. So it started with, I remember our first event was one we had in Lagos, and it was a support group event where we had people come in, and it was a purely vulnerable setting. I've never seen people be so vulnerable before. And then I had another session for women who have gone through some sort of psychological or physical abuse. And that one happened in 2019. And since then it's just been more and more and more. So for me, Unveil in itself is a safe space. I call it a safe space where people could actually express themselves and unveil, basically open that part of themselves that they feel has been locked up for a while, and nobody should see that dark part of themselves, or that thing where they feel like it's too heavy to speak about. And I'm grateful to God for what He has been doing with the platform.
I actually like the name Unveil because it to me, when I was reading about you before, Unveil is it's the taking off of a mask, or a cover. Really, we look at it as a cover. So it's a space where people can take off the cover and talk. So I'm going to ask, so how did you decide on the name Unveil? It's quite fascinating.
It is, honestly. I know that, to be honest, I see this thing it's a divine inspiration, honestly, because I honestly do not know. Till today, I just unveil the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's it. Like, there was no, it could be this one, it could be in every other name that I had. Unveil was the primary one. The other names were just things that could change. So Unveil had, I think it reflects what the idea that I had in my heart, the burden that I had in my heart, because I would always say that people were masked. I felt like we were all living around with people, there was just always a covering, and people just masking themselves, whether it was behind a neatly done makeup, hair, or fancy cars. Or I just felt like I wanted to be able to see people for who they were. And I felt like that name would pass the idea, would actually translate that idea to people, them knowing that this is what I'm talking about. So, yeah.
Okay, so it was plain. It was a plain name. You didn't have to explain that. If you're coming to this meeting, you're coming because you want to unveil and you want some healing as well, not just to talk about what has happened, but sit with people who may have also gone through something traumatic and get some healing around that, and having an open conversation and admitting that actually I might look pretty, or I might look well made up, or I might look well groomed, but there is something bothering me, and I would like to share and also unburden myself. You've got something else called Break the Silence. What is that?
So our Break the Silence campaign is actually this year's goal. Last year we had the one for adolescent mental health, and the year before then we always have each year we have a campaign that we run with. So for this year it's the Break the Silence culture, and the silence culture is one that exists around certain things that people are not exactly allowed to talk about, and how that directly affects their mental health. So we're talking about psychological challenges for people who have either received some sort of emotional abuse, domestic abuse, rape, people who have gone through some sort of neglect, trauma, and are currently living with it, but are not allowed to speak about it because of the way that the society would stigmatize them. And there are situations where people would say that they would be abused, and they would go to the authority to report it, and they'll tell them to go home and deal with it. That's a family issue, and they would somehow mask these things up. Or people who work in corporate environments who are properly being bullied by a superior, or going through some sort of trauma by a superior, but they are not allowed to talk about it, because in the corporate world you have to be strong enough and tough. You signed up for the job, so you should have it. So the culture of silence is something that we aim to completely eradicate. We feel like there's nothing that shouldn't be able to, people shouldn't be able to feel like they're not supposed to talk about this. And even if they decide not to, it's not because there's a law or an unconscious consensus that says, okay, you can't talk about this, but because they decide not to speak about it until they're ready to talk about it. So that culture of silence is something that we have decided to eradicate, because we know that this is something that contributes to mental health issues.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying the program is to help people find a voice, or
Yes.
because it's quite most of what you've talked about are systematic, somebody goes to police station and they report and they say it's something domestic, or maybe even the person wanted it and is now crying wolf. Like in more developed countries, we've had a lot of this Me Too campaign where actually women were being sexually abused and harassed at work, and it was permissible. And I know this happens across countries. It's not just so women are abused in that way. Men may be bullied or harassed in the workplaces. So the break the silence is to encourage the unspeakable, to encourage
Exactly.
people to talk about things that they're not necessarily permitted. Would you use that word, permitted, to speak
Exactly.
about?
I would say permitted would not exactly be the word, but like
Mm-hmm. Or not
I don't know
allowed.
if to say, yes, like stigma, or looked at as a certain way, like those things that when people talk about them, people look at them with some kind of look, like some kind of stare on their faces. So that's it.
Okay. And what does that stare mean? When
I think
because
it's
that
more.
is what shuts the person up, the fear of
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That somebody's going to. So what risk are they running? Are they running a risk of being called an outcast? Are they running the risk of being called a promiscuous lady? What are they running the risk of? Because you must be running a risk for you to be quiet.
Exactly. I feel like it's we have a culture in Nigeria, generally in every part of the world. Everybody has a culture, and I feel like somehow when we do not in any way um, identify with that culture, say for example, anything that makes me look less of the woman, the ideal woman, is looked as okay, maybe she's weak, or maybe she's, like you said, promiscuity, or maybe she's just unable to adjust to what every other person is going through. So that stare is usually like, okay, maybe the person is an outcast, or there's the judgmental look, or there's the sheer just lack of understanding. I feel like a lot of people are not properly educated on certain topics, and because of that, they react the way that they react. It's not that they understand it and then they react a certain ways, because they do not understand it, so they don't have any other reaction outside what they are already expressing. So say for example, a woman comes up and says that she's going through an emotional abuse. People don't think emotional abuse is a thing if it's not domestic. Is he hitting you? He's not hitting you. So what is he saying? He's verbally abusing me. They're like, please go home and deal with your problems. They don't understand the impact that emotional abuse can have on a person. So I feel like when people just they look at it as your lack of tenacity to adapt to what should be. As an African, you're supposed to be strong. As a man, you should mask your pain. You should be strong. You should look a certain kind of way. So when you do not look like what they expect you to look like, there's that stare.
Mm-hmm. Or if you maybe admit that you are finding this difficult and unable to cope, because if what the lady is saying is I'm being abused, and it's actually damaging to me, but the response usually is you need to tough it out.
Exactly.
This is what happens, and this has been happening for years and years, so you need to just tough it out. So what how do how I mean it's we have this place now where people can come and unveil. We have you encouraging people actually to challenge some of the systematic beliefs, not accepting the status quo. So what sort of how do you help these people? Because if I've come now and I've said, my husband is doing this and I know it's wrong, there's just a space for me to talk about it. So what happens next?
So we have, aside us having we have support groups, group therapy. We have support groups that we hold virtually, and we used to have the support groups running every Friday,
Mm-hmm.
every Friday of the week actually. But after a while, we just stopped it because we noticed that the attendance was actually getting lower and lower. We try to make it anonymous, where I feel like people are not comfortable enough yet. So we do that. At the same time, we also sort of link people to therapists, and we link them to people who want counselors or they are not ready for therapy yet. So we link them to therapists. We have people to counselors. We also have programs for people who might need therapy sessions and might not be able to afford them. We are able to give them therapy sessions at a subsidized rate, and most of it is handled by some of the donations that we receive from the organization. So we're actually trying to launch our helplines, not just suicide helplines. We want just general mental health helplines that reach out to people who are going through some sort of mental health issues. So we want to launch that, and we're processing it. We're currently in it. We are raising donations and funds for that cause.
Okay, so that's where I was going. So how do you support your organization? How do you get funds? Because all of this I know uh, costs quite a bit, and if you're referring people on, some may not be able to afford it. How do you run all of this?
Well, I would say that we get donations from family and well wishers, people who are interested in the cause. We have volunteers who work with us, and most of our volunteers are quite devoted to the cause, so a lot of them donate. One of our long term goals is to be able to reach out to international organizations that would be able to support. We have partnerships, we have sponsorships, and we are still in the process. I would say in the past, we've had a lot of people, spearhead a lot of our things, contribute to it, donate to it. But do we need more funds? Of course we do. And we're open to people actually contributing to the cause. Yes.
Okay, so if anybody who is watching and listening wants to help the Unveil Foundation and break your silence, they can reach out to you.
Yes, they can.
Okay,
Yes, reach out to me.
great. Okay, so we've talked a lot. We've talked about advocacy. We've talked about what your foundation does. We talked about policy and the future. Um, Not only for Nigeria, because Nigeria is in a lot of ways the giant of Africa. We don't always like to believe, but I believe that if changes are made there, then it can transcend into other parts of Africa. So what would you like to leave us with before we end today?
Okay, I feel my parting words would generally be it starts with us, as individuals in the society. And like I mentioned, like being safe spaces, it starts with one person choosing to extend a smile, an embrace, a handshake towards someone who you feel like is going through something. And it also starts with us understanding that mental health is an important part of our well-being. It's not just about how you're able to eat well or how you're able to work out and maintain your body and everything. If you're not looking out for your psychological well-being, then there's a lapse somewhere. So it's about taking care of ourselves, extending mercy towards ourselves, and most importantly, holding our government and our policymakers, our lawmakers, our corporate organizations, as business owners, holding ourselves accountable. whatever we feel like needs to be done in whatever way, the little change that we can make within our corporate organization. I feel like that's very important. Advocacy, there's no formal way of being an advocate. Anybody can be an advocate. I didn't have to study mental health to be an advocate. You can choose the course and run for it. If it's something that dearly affects you, you can start somewhere. It just starts with it. So social media has given everybody a voice. So I feel like it's never too late. It's never too early to start. That's my parting words.
Okay, so everybody can do something. That's what you're saying. You can do your little bit. You don't have to start a foundation, want to change policies, but in your own environment, you can start an awareness. You can ask your organization to change or to contribute and to look at the well-being of its employees. So where can people find you?
We have an Instagram page on at the underscore Unveil 1, and I have my personal page at BellaE34 on Instagram. We do have a Twitter page on the same username on Twitter. We have an email address that says unveilmentalhealthawareness@gmail.com. If you know anyone who is struggling or needs help, please send us an email. You can reach us on our Instagram page. You can send us a DM, and I promise we would respond as soon as possible. You could also reach me on my personal page. You can engage in conversations. You can be a part of our events. We usually have support group events virtually and physically for those who are currently in Nigeria. So you can be a part, you could be a volunteer, you could join us, and that's about it.
Thank you, Amaka. Bella Amaka, I should say, for this evening. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for your work and your dedication. Thank you. You see, it's easy to start, and really it can snowball into something. Amaka started something little, and now she's into advocacy. She's hoping to cause policies to change. So thank you for watching. But before I leave you, I have to remember those that were killed last year at the end of the End Stars protest. As you can see, Amaka is a product of Nigeria. She represents the youth. She represents a type of the generation that is in Nigeria that is thriving despite its challenges. Please remember the families of the lost 14 people that died in your prayers. Remember Nigeria in your prayers. Remember that even though this tragedy occurred, that it will somehow bring change to that nation. Thank you for watching. My name is Lydia Khalil, and I will see you next week.
LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.